Well, welcome back to another edition of Career Lab, and we are really excited to be back with you. You know, we've had a little bit of a break here during the difficult times that we've all had, but America's career coach, Julie LaCroix, who I am looking at right now, not sitting with, but looking at, and that's almost as good, is here with me. And I'm Joel Siegel, your co-host and producer for the podcast. Julie, great to see you.
Wonderful to see you, Joel.
You're looking fantastic.
Back. So are you.
Good to be back. And, you know, I wish we were in the same room, but we will be again soon.
Very soon, very soon. But, you know, it's interesting what this remote experience has been for everybody. I think we all feel a little more untethered and free to communicate remotely and work remotely and be productive remotely, which is something that I think was a learning curve for a lot of people. So it's interesting to see how much more power there actually really was in our economy that was available to us. Look at how good everybody's doing. Everybody's healthy and, you know, stay employed, and, you know, the economy's moving forward. Life is moving forward. Friendships are moving forward. Podcast is moving forward.
Well, you know, I'm glad you brought that up, because I know we've talked about this in the coming podcast for all of our listeners. We want you to know we are going to be covering that part of the work environment, that much work has become virtual. Many companies have emptied their Manhattan offices and they're now working virtually. And so we want to help. We want to hear from people, callers. We're going to have some very significant guests who are driving this new economy. And so we will be able to talk about that in podcasts, because to some degree, for many people, and especially I want to say people who didn't really have the ability to work, mothers with young children, other people who had real trouble, are now being able to find positions because they are virtual. So you're right, Julie, and we're going to cover that in succeeding podcasts.
Yes, and when we had Patrick on the show, executive in HR, we went through a lot about remote management. So there's really a lot to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great to see you. I'm glad you're happy and healthy and everything's going well.
Too. We have a great guest this morning. And reach out to us if you'd like to be a guest on Career Lab, because we're always looking for interesting topics and interesting stories. And even if you think yours isn't that interesting, but you feel like you need help, we're here for you. We'd love to have you on the show and help you make some progress.
I'm glad you said that, Julie, because it's so true.
It's so true.
Good. Well, here we are on Career Lab, and we're back with another segment with America's Career Coach, Julie LaCroix. Julie, how are you this morning? You looking good?
Thank you. I'm doing great. It's good to see you, Joel. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's really good to see you again. We've had a little break on Career Lab. I think all of us have had a little break here because of the obviously circumstances around the pandemic, but we're back. We're not quite back fully live, although we will be soon. And we're very excited to be back on this morning's podcast and have a very special guest to begin with. And she's here with us, Kacey Taormina. And how are you, Kacey?
I'm great. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, listen, it is our pleasure. So just to give us a little background, you know, I mean, both Julie and I know Kacey professionally and have for some years. And in talking about it, we felt, Kacey, you would be unusual, but a very special guest because of your ability to have such a broad professional and personal bandwidth. And, you know, we'd like to help people with their careers, with their career choices, with their career transitions. Julie helps people find where they need to actually be. She can work with a person here for 20 minutes and get them pretty well suited in where they should be heading. So we like to have other kinds of guests that help inspire people and show what's going on with careers. And that's why we asked you to come on.
Sometimes other people who are confused can learn a lot of information from others who are happy and aligned and productive and successful. We often, through the arc of our careers, go through different periods where we're a little bit confused and disoriented, and then we're very clear and very oriented. And right now, in this moment, you seem very clear and oriented with your feet firmly planted. And so every now and then, Joel and I like to bring somebody like this on to kind of showcase what an oriented feeling is and give other people some signals to be looking for, because we're often not as far away as we feel we are. So it's really great to have you on one of our shows of strength.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
Why don't we get started? Why don't you tell our audience, as well as, of course, reviewing with Julie and I, what you're doing? I mean, briefly, I know from working with you in the past that you're a real estate professional, that, you know, you've managed your family's business empire. You're also a mom of 2 kids who are at a particularly delicate age.
Most important role of all. Yeah.
And you are a reality TV star. And have been for some time. So that is a big plate. Why don't you start to break it down for us and tell us about some of the things you're doing?
Great. So I guess my job and my career is real estate broker. I do residential and commercial real estate in Southern California. And I have a team of 10 realtors under me now. I say with me, actually. I don't really like to think of myself as their boss. And I have been blessed.
But you probably are, right? I mean,
I would say that
knowing you.
I offer a lot of value to them as a leader and a coach. So
I didn't realize that you had 10 real estate agents working, with you or for you. That's incredible.
Yes.
Building her empire.
Just trying to stay in follow my dad's footsteps. So I learned about real estate early on from my family. My dad was a longtime real estate developer. And after graduating from business school in Boston, I had the opportunity to work with him and manage his properties. And that's where I sort of got my initial inroad into real estate brokering. So I have him as a client. I help him manage his real estate. And I also help just friends and family and contacts that I've made through my career of about 15 years and help them buy and sell homes as well as buy and sell commercial real estate investments. So that's one of the areas that I spend a lot of time.
So are you still doing commercial as well as residential?
Yeah, I'd say about 50% of my business is commercial. Actually, right after we hang up on this call, I'm heading to Anaheim to meet a client who's buying a triple net investment. He's buying an Armstrong nursery center, and he will have that tenant there for 15, 20 years, paying the rent and all the expenses. And it's a great investment for him. So yes, I handle both types of real estate. And I think that it's a little bit of a hybrid. Most realtors or brokers focus on either residential or commercial. But because I was exposed to such a variety of real estate transactions as a child and growing up, I was able to sort of be nimble and do both. So, yes.
That is unusual. I mean, just for our audience to know, Kacey's father has a significant real estate investment portfolio, but most of the brokers I know, and I think Julie, you'd probably agree, either do one or the other. So doing both, does it offer you some unique challenges? Residential
is very emotional. I use my, touchy-feely, sit and talk, let's have a coffee, let's think about what you want, what's this house going to make you feel like, and does your mother-in-law like it, and is the grass green enough for your dogs, and all that kind of stuff. And people may have an argument or they may have input from others, and then things change very quickly. So it's sort of like a roller coaster. So my goal in helping my residential real estate clients is to eliminate the stress so that they can experience the joy. And so there's a lot of things that I do in my process with my team to determine what areas are pain points for clients and then mitigate those so that the experience is joyful. For commercial clients, it's very much analytical. It's a numbers game. And we establish the bond. I demonstrate that I'm trustworthy and knowledgeable, and then I just kick ass for them. And it's a Monday through Friday kind of thing. We have short and sweet conversations. I'd say it's more masculine in its energy. And I really like balancing both. Having been a longtime athlete, I'm very competitive. And although I'm loving and acts of service is my love language, I'm also very determined. I have really high expectations for myself and people that work with me. And I expect nothing but perfection in the sense that I know what I'm capable of, and I expect that I perform that way every day. So that works really well for commercial. It's really a man's world in commercial, which I'm not intimidated by, I actually prefer. And so balancing the two is not easy for most people, not only because it's different energy and different sort of input and feedback, but it's different terminology and forms. And a lot of realtors who either follow me on social media or know me in the industry ask me, how did you do that? I kind of want to do that. What, but it's not an easy thing to do because it fits my personality. So I enjoy it.
Two bodies of knowledge.
Yes.
Two complete different training areas.
And, I get this question all the time. How did you learn all this stuff? And though it's interesting to me when you see people who are struggling in their careers and they are focusing so much on what other people are doing and how much other people are accomplishing. And they kind of make excuses and sort of sit and wallow in their misery. And my answer to people when they say, well, how did you learn all this stuff is, there's literally no excuse to not learn things. There are so many resources. If you want to learn about commercial real estate, you could start with Google, but there's so many resources for classes and ways to expand your knowledge. If you want to do it, you will. And if you don't really want it that bad, then you'll find all the reasons that it's difficult. So that's really been one of the main attitude adjustments I had early on in my career. When I was sitting, I remember it very vividly. I was sitting in a meeting probably 2 years after graduating college, a meeting with my father, and I felt super intimidated. It was a bunch of lawyers and commercial real estate brokers, and they were talking about analyzing a property, and I just didn't understand any of the numbers. And I said to my dad, I feel embarrassed to be at these meetings. I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't even know how I add value. And he said, if you want to know what we're talking about, then maybe you should teach yourself. And although I've learned from him, it was a really eye-opening moment to discover it really is in my hands and on my shoulders to learn and grow. It's nobody else's responsibility. You might hire a coach like yourself, Julie, but it's not your job to do the work. It's my job as a professional.
So that lifelong learning is a key feature of so many individuals. Mm-hmm. The difference for the listeners, just a little something to point out, the difference here with Kacey is that she has a very enterprising nature. She has a drive to persuade and build and bring a vision to life. And she's using lifelong learning as a tool to be industrious. Not every lifelong learner is also enterprising. But the important message here is no matter what your end goal is, I think Kacey makes a really good point about put the responsibility on yourself to not just learn what you need to learn to fill your own gaps, but to figure out what you're going to do with it. That could be as simple as writing a report on it at work for, a market research project. It doesn't necessarily have to be as magnificent as starting a whole, real estate management and professional sales organization like she's doing in a diversified setting. But I love your energy. I love your ability to look around and see what you have and don't have, and really, okay, where is my glass full? Where is it not full? Okay, I'm going to build here. I'm going to improve over there. Mm-hmm. Those are great best practices.
Yeah. I think when someone's getting into a new career and they feel intimidated, especially when I bring on new team members to my team and they say like, I don't even know all those terms. I feel like I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm going to be caught in a conversation and feel awkward. I always recommend that people research industry organizations. So I've joined a lot of different real estate organizations and subscribe to their newsletters, listen to podcasts and attend webinars so that I can capture knowledge. And I feel like those are like little bits of confidence so that when I'm having a conversation with someone or giving a small presentation, I have little tokens that allow me to feel like I'm adding value in conversations, which helps build your confidence.
And tracking the conversation, building a vocabulary for a new industry is always a little bit of an uphill climb, but it's not insurmountable. No. And I think in any career change or career redirection, there always is a vocabulary barrier, and it's really not that big of a deal. It's kind of like learning Spanish 101 or French 101. It's just learning the basic vocabulary. It becomes a toolkit that gives you kind of the blades on your ice skates that help you move across the ice, Build the vocabulary no matter where you're going. Start to tune in as you obviously have. That's another great best practice.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we go on, let me just mention too, thank you, Julie, for all that good input, and Kacey for describing it. Just backing the lens out a little bit to take a look at you, Kacey, in this context. What I heard you talking about a few minutes ago that really struck me was a lot of people, as you talk about and mentioned, kind of get hung up in, what are the challenges and what are the problems? And some of those can be solved by just getting down to work and doing it, like you learned. And, it's life's goals are somewhat more achievable if you actually just get out there and try. Now, everyone may not have your charisma or your beauty.
Or risk aversion.
Right. But I think that, if people would take up that challenge a little more and take it up in a very thoughtful way, they would be more successful wherever they are. And I think you pointed that out for listeners. And I really want listeners to appreciate that some of these goals are achievable, but you have to get down to work. You have to get out there and actually do it. We know it takes confidence, and we know that all of us have challenges around confidence. But confidence builds sequentially with the more you do. If you look at children growing, they gain confidence by
social
doing.
Learning.
Right. And even as they fall, they gain confidence every time. And the same principle applies to adults moving into new and different career occupations like you have. So thanks for that. That was really great. But we're just getting started with you. So, it's great to hear about commercial and
Joel and I will break anything down like to the detail.
It sounds incredible. And I didn't know that you now have a team of 10, although I should have figured that out by now.
So now you're learning management skills.
Yes. I own a bridal gown and quinceañera dress store. I've owned a nightclub. And I've had a lot of other small businesses. So it's not my first time managing people, but every industry has its own style.
Yeah. Bringing in your already existing skill set.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's move on because you've got a big career and we've got a lot to cover this morning. Tell us a little bit about your kids, how they're doing, and how you're able to, in the context of all the work you're doing, have rich and enduring relationships with them.
Yes. So I have a son, William, who's 13 in 7th grade, and Charlotte is 11 and in 5th grade. And they have been with me on the real estate journey ever since they were born. And so they've gone with me to open houses and sat in the car with an iPad while I showed property if I didn't have a babysitter as a single mom. So they're used to me having to work on the weekends and take phone calls at 8:00 at night in the middle of a family movie or whatever. And over the course of my career, when I look back at, what I'm proud of and what I regret, I would say that my biggest regret is time that I chose my career over my family. And so that's always my struggle. And the thing that I think of the second I wake up and as I'm falling asleep is how do I balance it all? And being a working mom is a unique challenge because I have the desire to have a house that's organized and food that's fresh and healthy and kids that are, that I take them to school and I pick them up and I give them a hug goodnight. So I want to have all of that. And at the same time, I need to be responsive to my clients who expect me to be available 24/7. So balancing that has been difficult, but I do have some sacred times where I either don't answer my phone or I work toward not scheduling any showings or appointments. So we try to have Sundays as a time as a family where we do nature walks and time together and breakfast in our PJs till 10 a.m. at home. And then try to have dinner together every night at the table, no phones, no interruptions, sort of like I did when I was growing up. That was really important to me when I was growing up. And so I try to implement that with my family. It's been interesting juggling this past year with the kids. Charlotte was in school for 2 hours a day, and William is in school 2 days a week. So basically, at 11 a.m., I have a 5th grader who's like, "What are we doing today?" I'm like, "I'm just getting started with my day." So I am not afraid to ask for help and support. And so that's been one of the key things for me to learn is to ask for help. I think when you're trying to balance a lot of things, that type A people tend to think that they can handle it all themselves, which was my fatal flaw in the beginning. And now I've realized that if I'm clear about the help that I need and I'm fair about the pay that I offer and the expectation that I have for the time that the work needs to be completed, that I'm okay with asking for help, because I used to feel guilty asking for help.
Right.
But now I say, okay, with my team, I could make Instagram posts and I could get all the forms loaded into DocuSign and I could print out the presentation book, but that's not the best use of my time. So understanding time management and what is the best use of my time and would I pay someone like me to go to Staples and buy envelopes? Probably not. So understanding that sort of dynamic has been really key for me to have a balanced family and work life.
I knew your kids when, of course, they were younger, so I followed you now as a mom and having been your career coach and your professional coach, I'm really glad to see that you implemented a lot of the things we worked on that you just described, especially these private and special moments with the kids because you are so busy. Yes. One thing I'd like to mention about, I think one thing that comes through to me and is always about you, Kacey, has been that with your kids specifically, because that's a little part of it we're talking about right now. I remember when Will and Charlotte were younger, and the thing that struck me was the time that you did spend with them was very intensive and very personal and very intimate. And that was the thing, when you were able to sort of drop off your professional role and really get involved with the kids, you were really with them. And I think that probably counted for a lot in their development.
Yes, I've learned as teenagers that they don't really want an entire day spent with me. So now I work on chunks of quality time. So we may say, listen, let's go for the family walk. We're going to walk and get a donut and give me 1 hour of your morning. And then you can go ride bikes with your friends. So I have different expectations than when they were toddlers or like 5-year-olds, they want to just hang out with me all the time. Now we just do blocks of time.
So there's this interesting phase in the lifelong arc of a career where there's about a 10 or 12 year or 15 year for some people period of what we call in psychology role conflict, where there are too many competing roles for the primary spot. Wage earning, home, caring for your home itself, like you said, having healthy food and an organized, beautiful home, being a mother, being a wife, managing a business or 5 in your situation. There are lots of competing roles. And for any of our listeners who are experiencing this episode, this phase of role conflict, please remember at some point, some of these roles drop off. There are a lot of obligations competing for first place. And that's where the conversation usually of work-life balance usually is entering the conversation. And in this case, you've touched on how you find that balance a little bit, but it's usually during this time of life that we realize we really do need that work-life balance. I can only speak, my own experience was because I was in a very similar situation, managing a business, had, single mom, 2 kids, they needed my attention all the time. So I made a promise to myself that when I was working, I was 100% with my clients. And when I was at home, I was 100% with my kids. Now that worked for the structure that I lived in. That probably wouldn't work for you. But it was a way that I could know that I was doing quality work in either of those 2 competing roles that were constantly tugging and pulling at me. So it sounds like, a big part of your success is recognizing how to prioritize what's in front of you. And, that's another very strong element to pay attention to as anybody manages their career, especially in this phase of life.
Yeah. It's hard for me because I'm real not scatterbrained, but I want to try to I'm a multitasker, and I know that single tasking is definitely more effective. So that's been a daily thing, an hour
Kids
thing.
do get in the way of work, and work does get in the way of parenting. Darn it.
Yes, it does.
We could spend all day with you. Tell us about the show. How did you get involved with the TV show? And of course, I've seen it. It was a great show. And tell us all about that.
So I was on a show called Real Estate Wars on Bravo Network, very similar to $1 Million Listing. It probably would have been called $1 Million Listing Orange County, but they felt like the New York $1 Million Listing show was popular enough, and they didn't want to. They'd had a failed San Francisco and a failed Miami, maybe. So they wanted to have a new name. So they called it Real Estate Wars, which is not who I am. I'm not like a, fight with people, but we were on 2 teams competing for all of the high-end listings in Newport Beach, California. And it was a really fun experience. I learned so much about myself and about filming and how to produce and how to deliver a message clearly and how to be a good speaker. And it really helped me discover that I really love being on camera, not to be famous, but because it's a platform that resonates well with my personality and allows me to share value with people and inspiration in a way that writing or taking, pictures doesn't do for me. So it was a really fun experience. Sometimes the producers would put us in situations where you knew they were hoping for a certain reaction for ratings. And I had a discussion with a producer who produces one of the Housewives series. I actually met him at Equinox as well. And before we started filming, he said something very smart to me. And he said, Kacey, you're going to be put in situations that are going to catch you off guard. And I want you to think this anytime you're on camera. Would you be proud if you were sitting down next to your grandma watching that episode? And I thought, that's a really good way to look at it. So I always kept that in mind as I was filming, because they would put us in situations where they tried to create conflict or ask you questions out of the blue. And you'd think like, how the hell do they know that? And so it was interesting. They wanted to actually film my wedding to web, and I didn't want them at the real wedding. So we had a California ceremony, a separate ceremony just for them. They filmed it. They never actually aired it because they ran out of time, but it was really a really, really fun experience. And I learned a lot.
It's fantastic. How many seasons were you on the show?
The show only ran one season.
That's what I
unfortunately.
thought, right? Yeah.
But it was a great experience. And I actually really enjoy producing my own content now more than being on the show. The show we would film for that actually, one of the things I didn't like about the show is we'd film a lot at night in our office because they wanted to wait for everyone to be gone. So for probably 9 months, I missed putting my kids to bed probably 3 or 4 days a week. And that never felt right to me. I hated it. I'd get home and they were asleep. And it just, as a mom, that's one of the most special moments. I mean, obviously we love it when they're asleep, but the moment where you have that peace and quiet and connection, it was really, it was not something that I enjoyed. So I love that I have now a really great videographer on retainer. And every month we create 8 to 12 videos, which I get to direct. I get to decide if I'm going to do a cooking video or a video about inspiration and family or fitness or business, or let's teach you about commercial real estate terminology, or I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened to me and tie it back into a lesson. So I know that I will have an opportunity to be on TV again. I've put that out in the universe. I'm hoping for it to be a Spanish speaking opportunity, and it would be wonderful if it could create great impact in my community. So I know that it's coming again. My dad keeps telling me I should be a newscaster, but I don't really want to do that. He's like, he'll watch my videos. He's like, I'm telling you, Kacey, you've got to be a newscaster. I said, Dad, I know that. Thank you.
Well, you're good at putting together that angle and that message. You have that journalistic instinct.
Thank you.
I remember in seeing the show, it seemed like there was considerable, I'm sure that was built in by the producers, competition between you and the other females on the show.
Yes.
There was this dynamic going on, and I've watched a number of them, and it seemed like you also kind of like grew in the show as well. You could tell, I could tell, of course, knowing you as a professional and as an actress, you were growing from the beginning, the early shows when you were kind of much more reserved, to later on when you developed more of the persona that you now have on camera. So it must have been a great experience as well in terms of you becoming, more comfortable doing this.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I tried to encourage my teammates to film, and some of them say, I'm not good on camera. And I think what people need to realize is that not everybody has to be like, hi, I'm polished and I'm perfect on camera. It's okay to have a different personality than that. It's okay to be soft-spoken or nerdy or like have a terrible outfit. The thing that's important when you're making content is that you believe in what you're talking about and that you're passionate about it, and it will just flow out of you like breathing. If you're trying to force yourself to talk about stuff you don't really care about, or that you're not confident in, or that just doesn't resonate with you, then it's going to feel awkward always. For me, when I film, I have a general idea what I'm going to talk about, but I do not write scripts ever. And sometimes I tell the producer, please just roll the camera, go. I've got something, I got to talk about it. And we do it in one take. Because for me, I'm not good with, if I script out the whole thing and then I'll stress that I'm going to forget it. But for some people, they need to know every single thing they're going to talk about. So when you're creating content, and if you're going to do social media, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, I always think about what is the value that this is going to add to the viewer. And then that makes it a lot easier. Instead of me just showing you a day in my life, I might say, here are 3 things I do to get better sleep at night because I've got a type A personality. So I'm showing you, you're learning about me, but you're also learning something that might be valuable to you as a viewer. So in creating content, I always make sure that there is a purpose.
Let me ask you a question. This is, I think, will be important to a lot of our listeners. I'm like that. I mean, I started when I was young, just being like, speaking extemporaneously. So it became natural to me. Yes. And then at every family thing that ever happened, they asked me to be the MC because, I could just do it. And it was just and so I do it all the time now. And I do the same way on video. But, and you obviously are doing the same thing. What I notice when I watch a lot of colleagues and professionals, and Julie and I have talked about this, is that a lot of them do short segments on social media, et cetera, but a lot of them aren't very good. And so I'm wondering, when you have it in your mind about what you want to say in a short video, how are you able to organize that so that it flows pretty easily without a script? So exercise is really important to me. And exercise is my inspiration. And it creates the juices and the energy that gets my good ideas flowing. Pretty much, I don't have good ideas unless I've exercised that day. So usually I'll take the dogs for a walk or I'll run. And while I'm literally on the treadmill, I'll have this idea pop into my head. And I write it down in the notes section of my phone, and I might have a title. So the other day I was running, and I had just packed my suitcase to take my daughter to Arizona. And I was running, and I was thinking about, after I packed my suitcase, that my suitcase is only half full. So while I was on the treadmill, I thought, oh my God,
this is an example about life, because I left my suitcase a little bit empty as well, because I wanted to pick up some art and souvenirs while I was gone. And I thought about how remind people that even when they go through hard things in their life, that they should leave their suitcase, their heart a little bit open and leave room in there for new experiences and new things. Even though you've traveled many journeys and you've had shit happen to you in your life that makes you want to close your heart, keep it open and leave room for all that new great stuff. And so it was like, man, I wouldn't have thought about that if I had sat down and said, I'm going to make some videos today. I got to make some new ideas. But it was just kind of like going to church.
Good metaphor.
Yeah. But like when you think about a pastor who's really engaging, it's usually because they tell a great story and then hooks you right into the Bible verse he's trying to talk about. It's not just all Bible. Like you think about boring church, it's like, let's talk about God the whole time. For me, that's boring. So that's what I try to do, is create opportunities for myself to be inspired and think about every little thing that I encounter throughout the day as a lesson.
Kacey, where can we, I didn't know this, but where do you have a channel now that you're loading all your video stuff on? You just put it on LinkedIn, or where's your stuff mostly where our audience can go listen to you and see you? Most
of my content is on Instagram, and my Instagram name is at Kacey, Kacey Taormina. That's where I load everything, and I'm starting to load it all onto YouTube. And I've got to get into LinkedIn. I very rarely use it, but I'm going to have someone help me with that because I think it would be valuable.
Great. I just wanted to make sure that our listeners knew where they could see you and watch some of this video content.
Kacey Taormina's, career pathway. It's going to open up here pretty soon again, I think. Not that it's not already wide open, but I love that you're putting things out there because they will come.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I think before we have to wrap, and we are getting close on time, but the other thing Julie and I had talked about, and a reason why we were really hoping we could have you up here as a guest is because, and I think in your presentation and your sharing with our audience is when you really demonstrated this. It's one thing to do a lot of things and to be a type A person and all that stuff. It's another thing to do it and have some balance about yourself. And I mean, it's not just the accomplishing and the doing, it's also having a balance. We all know type A people who could get an awful lot done, but we don't really want to spend any time with them, frankly. You know what I mean? They're just not people we want to be around because, they're always full speed and we're going, could you just, allow me a little bit of wedge of room to, and it doesn't happen. So how do you do that? Because I know you to be very balanced. And in my professional work with you, I know the way you are and the way you relate with other people. So how do you achieve that?
I think it's two things. And the first is that I remember that I am blessed to be a blessing. So I am grateful for everything that I have. And I recognize that the best thing I can do with all that I have is to give it to others. And so I was raised in a very humble household. We always had resources, but we were always thinking of how to help others. And so that's probably the main thing that I think about, is the way that I balance it is, let's say if I don't get enough sleep, if I don't get exercise, then I'm going to be real grumpy. I'm going to forget stuff and I'm not going to be good at my job and I won't be able to take good care of my family. So I make that a priority. Every day I'm up at 5 a.m. exercising, and I have my workout done before my kids even wake up. And then I just really know what is important to me. So I know that eating healthy is important to me. So I'm not going to go drive through Starbucks and eat breakfast there, or Carl's Jr. and feed my kids chicken tenders. That's a really important value, is health. So I make sure that happens. I also don't drink alcohol and I don't drink caffeine. So I have really specific choices that I make in my life that I think of my body. My dad calls me a Ferrari, but because my engine is always revving. But the first thing I do is I take care of my physical body, which allows me to then be a machine for all these other things that I want to accomplish. I also have learned to say no to things. So luckily,
big one.
This year has been awesome because there's no annoying cocktail mixers with bad cheese and cheap wine where you're supposed to meet people and make business. So I've also prioritized what I do and don't want to spend my time on, and that has made a big difference. Because I think it's interesting when my husband is a personal trainer, and I hear the stories from him about people being frustrated they can't reach their goals. But when you talk to them about how they spend their free time, they could tell, or they say like, I don't have time to do this or that. I don't have time to meal prep, but they had time to watch like 3 straight hours of Netflix every night. So prioritizing how I spend my time, because I have very limited free time, has been really important to me in finding balance. And I'm also, in the last couple of weeks, I've worked really hard to actually do less when I'm doing a single activity. So for example, I would if I, let's say, was walking on an incline, the treadmill, normally I would check my emails, be listening to music, and maybe watching the instructor on Peloton. Now I say, I'm not going to listen to any music, no headphones. I'm just going to walk and feel what it feels like to be walking and hear my breath. And maybe if I sit outside to eat my lunch, I just sit there with no music, no phone, feel the sunshine, listen to the birds. So I'm trying to be more present in what I'm doing. That's also another way to find balance, even if it's for 5 minutes.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's something we worked on a long time ago, and certainly with what you've got going on.
Can I say one thing? I'm glad you ended with that word balance, because I did want to circle back to that for you and me and any mom, who feels, or single dad or primary parent of any kind who feels that role conflict and that responsibility to the children and does have that kind of nagging voice, am I spending enough time? Is it okay that I, am picking up phone calls on Saturdays or during the family movie or during, leaving the dinner? What's really important to remember is that there are lessons in doing that for the children that are going to help them respect hard work and diligence and dedication to what their parents have made promises on. Mm-hmm. And I can only speak from my own experience, and I'm sure a lot of people are nodding their heads right now, listening as they listen to me say this, but my daughter flew out of high school and went to college with very strong wings because she saw the mommy model how to do it. And she doesn't call me for advice. She's like, I got it. I've got this every now and then. Yeah. But it's, she knows that she needs to learn how to be capable. She knows that she doesn't know how to do that. So as she's off exploring her world, trialing and erroring, she remembers watching me do that too, and making mistakes and having successes. And, in the balance conversation, I just want to put this out there, and not to make this about me, but just to, assure you and any of the other listeners who are experiencing this kind of parenting thing where, gosh, I've got this awesome career. I feel like I'm putting my kids a little bit on the side burner. One of the things I always did whenever I received a letter, a note, an email, a gift, any kind of recognition from any client, corporate or individual, or pro bono, I would always share it with my children. And it would be addressed to me, but I would always read it to them and say, this is for you too, because you are the one who gave me the time and the space to be this for this person, and you deserve as much recognition as I do. So I really included my children in the investment of the career that is building their family's future. And I felt that helped them see that it was worth it at the time. So for what that's worth to you or any other listener, I'm not saying you have to do it my way, but your children may not get that perfect dinner or that 2-hour family time. It has to be a 45-minute family time with a couple of interruptions, but that's not all that bad. There's a lot of goodness in there.
That was your example gave me chills. That's really beautiful. And I never really thought to thank my children for giving me time to do my career. So I'm going to implement that. I like that.
If it weren't for them, I wouldn't have a master's degree. I wouldn't have a practice. I wouldn't have anything if they weren't willing to let me drop them off at soccer and not sit there on the sideline, but run back to the office and take another client.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in the privileged position of knowing both of you very well. And so I know that, and I know your children. I know your children, Kacey, and of course, I know your children very well, Julie. And Julie, your children are magnificent young adults, and they're coming along very well. So everything that both of you have said about that is a testament to how great mothers can really impact their children and their development.
And have great careers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up, Kacey, I was your coach a while ago, so I want to just bring up that because I think people may finish listening to the podcast going, well, boy, I'll never be like that, thinking about you. And, I think, I've coached you in moments when you weren't that confident, when, you were struggling to achieve some things. And so it's not always like that. Kacey's not Wonder Woman. Kacey's Kacey. She's a marvelous professional who has achieved in multiple areas, and that's why we wanted to have you on. But you've also had your own challenges, and you overcome them. And just like all of you who are listening can begin to overcome some of these challenges. Kacey wasn't born like this as a baby. She grew up and became this way through a variety of experiences and challenges. And as your coach, I can say that you grew tremendously in a number of areas that have allowed you to become the sort of the person you are today. So we are really grateful to be able to see that person and have you on our show.
And extract some of the wonderful lessons that you've learned and help our listeners really learn a little bit from you and understand your stage of life and how you're balancing it and trying to add as much quality into everything that you're touching. Thank you. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Everybody should follow Kacey on Instagram. She gave your Instagram handle.
At Kacey Taormina.
Right. And we will be highlighting and promoting this show before it's out. And Kacey, we love you. We're so glad to see you. Please give your best to your family because we think about them. You have a tremendous family. And it's really, really wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Will you come back and check in with us again sometime?
I'm happy to talk anytime.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
See you soon.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Hey, Julie. Well, it was really great having Kacey on the show. I knew that it would be an exciting experience for you and I and for our listeners, and certainly turned out that way.
What a hot shot. She's balancing it all.
Yeah. More than a hot shot, I feel like she really gave a lot of our listeners, including you and I, something to shoot for because she's really been able to achieve a lot in a way that not only is just successful, but also feels good to listen to her and watch her talk about that. Not everyone who's successful is a person you want to emulate for a variety of pretty obvious reasons.
One of the things I noticed about Kacey as she was talking, and you and I know her and her family situation, and we've been part of their coaching universe for a decade, but she sets very high standards for herself. Did you notice that? And that can be exhausting for some people, but I love how it has simplified her impact. And she's not all over the place. She's very good at prioritizing, and she prioritizes to a certain level of standard. And I think that has really helped her with her concrete goal setting and her own personal definition of herself, her own identity, who she is and who she wants to be. So I think that, setting high standards is a real piece there that maybe, we didn't get a chance to touch on, but something to call out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can say, and I think Kacey would be fine with me saying it, that she mentioned several times in our interview that she has been able to learn to slow down and focus on one part of her picture at a time. That was something that I worked on with her a lot in coaching. There was a time when she couldn't really do that, when she was kind of, focusing on everything all the time at the same time. And that meant that some things weren't getting the quality of attention that they could get. Now she's obviously grown because she 3 different times on the show, she mentioned that she's able to do that. And I was so delighted to hear that she's been able to integrate that. And I think that for people who do a lot of things, that's an important differentiator is, can you really get focused in an intimate and productive way on one part of your environment? If you can, I think you'll be more successful. Don't you, Julie?
Absolutely, Joel. And I think it's a testament to your coaching skills, because to take a young, vibrant, type A, energetic, high expectation woman like Kacey was when you started working with her and get her to this place of productivity and balance and feeling centered. Did you notice how just centered she was? That takes a lot of work. That does not come naturally. And like she said, she wasn't born with it. She's worked to get there. So, I love her openness to being coached and to learning from you and in implementing some of the suggestions that you recognize could bring her to a better place.
So, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Julie, because that's an important thing that we sometimes we don't get a chance because of the type of guests or callers we have on where we don't know them and we haven't had a history with them. But in this particular wonderful segment, we could see that working on these kinds of things does work.
It does.
This is a testament to growth and coaching and all the things that you just mentioned that Kacey kind of represents, because she was very different, a long time ago. And now she has reached this place where she's been able to integrate that stuff. And of course, you and I are always working on that stuff. Julie and I are always coaching each other. I love to be coached by America's Career Coach. Nothing better for me than to sit around and Julie tell me how I can do something better. And I think it's the same way going towards you.
I think you make my good habits and I try to break your good habits.
There we go. Wow, I'll have to think about that to make sure I understand. Well, it's been a really great segment. And, it's not often we have a guest who's quite as vibrant and quite as exceptional in so many areas as her. And I hope everyone really enjoyed visiting with her today.
Absolutely. Little stardom on the show. Never hurt anybody.
And let's just remind our listeners that Career Lab is available on Apple Podcast, on Stitcher, on Android platforms, wherever you get your podcasts. Like us, listen to us, follow us. Most of all, like us and follow us if you like what we're doing. I don't know if our listeners all know, because we've been off the air just a little bit during the pandemic. We have a history of about a year and a half of podcasts, Julie.
It's been
and
a while.
During that time, America's career coach, Julie LaCroix, has dispensed some of the finest career coaching that you'll ever get for free on a podcast. You might wonder, gee, too bad I can't meet with Julie LaCroix. Well, you
Call
can.
us.
I mean, not only can you email her and reach out to her in person, but you can also hear a lot of the work that Julie and I do with our guests and our callers on Career Lab. So check it out.